Hello, good morning, everybody. Well, today it's Friday, yay! And it is the final day of the week. So I'm here for a new and final video of this week of biology. I'm going to say probably some parts are going to be just for Primero C and some others for Primero D, because you are now not going at the same time because of the different festivities that we have had. But next week, as we have a festivity on Wednesday, which is going to affect just my class with Primero C, finally you will be again balanced. Okay, so first of all, Primero D, so sorry that I cannot do the experiment today with you, but I have to go to the school. Well, we're preparing some things in order to be able to not come back to the classes, but we have to do some papers and so on from the administration. So that's why I cannot be online tomorrow. But we will be doing the experiment next Monday. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about. I told you last week when we started studying plants that we were going to study the different groups. From now, the only thing that I have mentioned, talking about the different groups of plants that we classify them, it's just related with the presence or absence of flowers. Remember that? We have classified them in non-flowering plants and flowering plants. Well, we could be talking about plants for the whole course, okay? So today we're just going to focus a little bit in non-flowering plants, and we're just going to study the main characteristics of each of them, because if not, as I say, well, there's when you study biology, there are subjects just to talk about plants. For example, we talked about becoming a botanist one day in class, I remember. This is the people who study biology and then later specialize in the study of plants. So we're going just to the most important things. Today I'm going to show you some difficult vocabulary, which is not going to be, you don't need to remember those terms that I'm going to mention, but well, as your book have them, we're going to analyze them together. But don't worry about them, you don't need to remember that or anything. So let's go, as usual, to see where we are. Remember that we are in the biology part, in Unit 3, plants. We have studied the introduction together, and then the other day I jumped to plant nutrition because I wanted you to be prepared and remembering photosynthesis before we do the experiment. Well, Primero C has done the experiment already, and I think it was a nice experience, so hopefully the experience with Primero D on Monday will be also very, very nice. Good, so as I was saying, today we're going to study non-flowering plants. If you remember, these plants are also divided into two different types of categories, which are bryophytes and pteridophytes. Difficult vocabulary. Remember the Spanish word for each of them, bryophytos in the case of bryophytes, pteridophytos in the case of pteridophytes. Remember that we also have these words in Spanish which starts with a P, but it doesn't sound, like, for example, psicólogo or things like this. So it's the same. Pteridophytes, pteridophytos, we don't pronounce the P, which is at the very beginning. So you have to understand that as we're talking about non-flowering plants, we're talking about the plants which are more simple in our planet. So because of that, they are also the oldest ones, okay? They normally have to live in moist environments, so in environments which have a lot of water. Moist means humid, significa húmedo. As they don't produce flowers, how do they have to reproduce? By producing spores, and there are two categories as I just mentioned. If you remember, this picture is similar to the one that I showed you the first day we talked about plants. These are the places where, in this case, ferns, los helechos, they produce the spores to reproduce, but we'll go to this later. Okay, so in the case of bryophytes, mosses, los musgos, they are the smallest and most primitive plants. They are so simple that they don't even have a vascular tissue. Do you remember what was the vascular tissue? El tejido vascular? I explained that to you the first day. Vascular tissue is the tissue that plants have to transport the sap up and down. Remember the raw sap and the phloem sap that we studied the other day. Well, mosses, if you have seen them in the forest, they are super tiny, very tiny, like centimeters. And they don't even have real roots. That is because they don't really need to take the water from the soil. They are designed to absorb water from the environment. They are like tiny sponges in the shape of plants. They can soak the water from the atmosphere. And because of that, as all the plant is able to take this water from the environment, that's why they don't need a vascular tissue to share all the liquids from the upper part of the plant to the bottom, and also because they are super tiny. So they are very, very simple. They don't even have these xylem and phloem tissues that we studied together the other day. Not even real roots, okay? But they are plants, they are autotrophic, they are eukaryotic, they do the photosynthesis, so they fulfill the rest of the characteristics. As I was saying at the beginning, they need moisture and shade, necesitan humedad, necesitan sombra to survive. They are normally located in the northern area of the trunks of the trees or of the rocks, and that's a good way if you get lost in a forest any day. Hopefully, I hope that you don't get lost in a forest any time in your life, but if you do, you can try to orientate a little bit yourself by looking at where the mouse is. If you know where your house is, if you have to go to the east, to the west, you know where the north is if you are able to locate the mouses in that forest. We can try that experiment one day. uh, and yes, they can live on rocks, trees, walls, the roofs. They don't have the vascular tissue, as I was saying. And this is the typical structure that they present. They have something similar to roots, something similar to tiny stems, something similar to tiny leaves, and then this is the place where they produce the spores. So they don't really have even the three main organs of plants, okay? They have something similar to the roots, which are called the rhizoids, los rhizoides. They're small hairs that do more or less the same function as the roots. Then they have something similar to a stem, which is called the caulidium, el caulidio, also in Spanish, something similar to the stem. And then they have something similar to the leaves, which are called the phyllidia. Son todo, como veis, nombres latinos. And these are the terms that I told you that you don't have to remember this year. So they don't even have like real roots, stem, and leaves, but they have structures which look alike and that do the same functions. Then, as I was saying, they have like these capsules in some moments of the year, which are called the sporangium, los esporangios. They are formed from the caulidia, from the tiny stem that they have, and inside they produce the spores that they release when they have to reproduce. Okay, so oops, sorry, as usual. These are real pictures of mosses. In this one, I like it a lot because it has a very good zoom in the plant, and you can see, well, here you can see the phyllidia, the tiny leaves that they have, but you can see very clearly this longest caulidium that they have with the esporangio at the end. Can you see them? And they look wonderful. They cover huge areas in forests and in humid spaces. Look, here you also have these sporangia. Can you see these tiny capsules when they produce the spores, right? Here again, another beautiful one. Here you have, well, it is charging a little bit. Here you have the tiny leaves, the phyllidia, and then all the sporangia that they have to produce the spores and be able to reproduce. Cool. I know that you know this type of plants. We normally find them very easily when we go hiking or something, or maybe you have taken them to your houses to do the los belenes. Yeah, in Christmas time we normally do that. So they are very important for the environment because they are, well, producers, of course. They produce oxygen for the rest of the organisms. Some herbivores consume them. Instead of consuming other types of plants, they are specialized in consuming mosses. And then they are very important to cover the soil, to protect the soil. Remember that I told you that the roots of the plants, in this case, mosses, they don't have roots, but they do the same function. They're protecting the soil from erosion. So these are the three main important facts that they do for the environment. And besides, they are very, very affected by pollution. So you can just find mosses in places which have a very clean air. Okay, exactly the same as lichens, if you remember when we studied the previous lesson. So they are a good indicator of a good health of that environment. Good? Easy, right? So yeah, the tiniest and oldest plants on Earth. The rest of the plants probably come from them. They have been evolving. And the next group that we have in this main group of non-flowering plants are pteridophytes, los pteridófitos, which we normally call ferns, the common name in Spanish, los helechos, okay? They normally live as well near bodies of water. They need moisture to reproduce. And they have, in this case, they do have a vascular tissue, and they do have real roots, stem, and leaves, even though they look a little bit different from the flowering plants, okay? Um, the roots that they have, we call them rhizomes. Las raíces se les llama rizomas, but they are thick roots that they have underground. Then they have, I was confused. These are the stems that are underground. The roots are roots, but these rhizomes are stems that grow underground, okay? And then they have the fronds, which are their special leaves. Fronds en castellano las llamamos frondes, and it is similar to a word that we use a lot that is frondoso. And when we say that a tree or a forest is frondoso in Spanish, we're meaning that it has a lot of leaves with a green color and so on, because ferns are very like this, okay? That's why we call these leaves that they have fronds. They also reproduce by spores, okay? And it is very typical that they appear in this special way that I showed you last week. Here you have some pictures of the ferns. This is how the fronds, los frondes, grow and become real leaves. These are the sorus. This is a beautiful picture of the sorus, which is the groups of sporangia. Son grupos de esporangios. Cada saquito sería un esporangio. And inside of each of these tiny sacs, they produce the spores in different moments of the year. Then they open them, they release the spores, and anywhere where the spore is falling down, it can generate a new fern. Okay? Remember that they don't produce flowers, so they reproduce in this way. Good? So careful, because I was confused. You know that I normally don't record the video again. If I get confused, this is a normal class. So don't forget that in this case they have roots, they have rhizomes, which are their stems. They normally are underground, and then they have the fronds, their leaves, to do the photosynthesis. Okay. Nowadays we have fronds which are not very big, but we also have some fronds that can be meters high. Okay. I'm going to show you some pictures because they look beautiful. Some of them look even like palm trees or anything, you see? So the generality is that in our latitudes we don't have these big ferns, but in some places, especially tropical areas, they even look like big trees, okay? Can you see them? They're huge and beautiful. The thing is that these ferns that look like trees were more typical millions of years ago, in a period where not even the dinosaurs were here on Earth. It's a period called the Carboniferous. The majority of the coal that we have right now, when we studied coal, when we studied rocks together, I told you that coal, el carbón, it comes from ancient plants that were destroyed, that were covered with soil, and with millions of years of time, fermentations and different processes have occurred there to transform that plant into coal that we use right now as a fossil fuel. So the majority of the coal that we have right now and that we have been using since the Industrial Revolution began comes from this type of big ferns that exist during the Carboniferous period, like 250 million years ago, a long time ago. And how do we know that? Well, because we have discovered these ancient ferns becoming, or in the shape of fossils. Okay, here are some pictures of rocks which have these perfectly shaped fossil ferns that we can see. They're beautiful and they're very common. We normally see them in slate, si os acordáis era la pizarra, or in limestone or clay, so in sedimentary rocks, of course, and we can see perfectly the rests of the leaves of the ferns. As you see, we are able with different radiometric techniques to measure how old these rocks are, and that's how we have discovered that during this period we have these wonderful, beautiful ferns, very big ones in this case in the Carboniferous period, which have well, given us the most important thing apart from oil, yeah, to allow us to evolve as a society since the Industrial Revolution. So this is all for today. I didn't want to explain you all the different types of plants because flowering plants are a little bit more complicated, so I'm going to leave that for a next lesson. So for today, that's all. As usual, I tell you every day, but I think it's nice to remember. You need to do the tiny, tiny diagram again. Remember that it is a diagram, not a summary of these two groups of plants, which belong to the non-flowering plants group. Remember that you also have the task about your notebook. It's not necessary that you upload every day a picture of the notebook. Remember that once or twice every lesson, it's okay. But if you want to do it, I would be very pleased to see them. I have been having some troubles to enter to the tasks during this week. I have tried twice and I couldn't enter. So hopefully tomorrow morning I will be able to do it. From the school I will try, but don't worry, you can keep uploading your pictures of the notebook there and I will see them and give you some feedback. So I'm not going to tell you to do anything else as homework because I think that doing the notebook today and keeping going with the project that some of you are with it and you're moving on and you're finding different and wonderful ways of presenting the information, with this it's enough. In fact, when I started this lesson, I thought that with the project you were going to be kind of occupied, okay? So just a tiny diagram for today and keep working in the project. If I have time, it's a little bit late in the afternoon, but if I have time, I will try to prepare a tiny activity that you can do here online. But if not, for today, the diagram of non-flowering plants and keep working in your leaves hand project, it's enough for me. Just primero de, remember that you need to be prepared for the experiment next Monday. So if you lack any of the ingredients, try to find them. As I told primero C, it's very difficult to find alcohol nowadays in the supermarket. So if you don't find it, don't worry. You will be able to see the experiment during Teams, during the video conference. But the rest of the things, yeah, try to be ready. Okay? Have a nice Friday, have a nice weekend, have some rest, and see you next Monday. Miss you. Mwah.